out. As Morgan mentioned, my name is Josh Bethel. I'm an account executive here at Spare Labs. Today, we're going to be focusing on micromobility in and around campuses, specifically universities and colleges. That setting, nighttime mobility, keeping it safe. Today, the topics that we want to go through, just generally talking about the value add of having this type of service, the different ways and different methods that universities tend to make this happen. And before we get into the introductions, just wanted to put a quick note that if you have any questions, feel free to utilize the chat function and or the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. At the end, we'll have questions for the panelists or just general questions that we will answer. So what I will do now is get my screen shared so we can jump into introductions. Perfect. So, as I mentioned, my name is Josh Bethel, account executive here at Spare Labs. At Spare, we are a mobility management software provider. We do focus on two main verticals, universities being our newest standalone vertical, but we also do quite extensive work in the transit agency side. I'll leave it to each of the panelists to introduce themselves in the order of the slide there.
Good day. My name is Lindsay Mason. I use she, her pronouns. I work at Colorado State University. I serve as the director of an office called Off-Campus Life, and we are the office that houses our Safe Ride program, RAM Ride, and I've been working with our Safe Ride program for 10 years.
Morning, everybody. My name is Tony Mazza. I am the Director of Transportation and Parking here at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. My department is responsible for our Safe Ride program here at USC, as well as all the parking and transit needs for the university.
Hello, my name is Rory Payne. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the current director of CU Night Ride at the University of Colorado Boulder.
Perfect. So for today's webinar topics, as you can see, we'll be going over how these institutions provide flexible and reliable ride options for students, how they leverage TNCs to increase service capacity, as well as utilizing a user-friendly interface, which empowers riders to book and manage trips independently of school's involvement. So let's kick things off by learning a bit more about how each of your Safe Ride programs operate and what are some of the unique aspects of the school's geographic and demographic locations that impact your services. As we know, each Safe Ride service is kind of like a snowflake. No two are 100% alike, but there are a few commonalities. So starting off with Lindsay, can you provide some context into the origin of RAM Ride and some of the unique characteristics of CSU that make the program a necessity, specifically in and around campus?
Absolutely. So RAM Ride was started at Colorado State University in 2003 by our student government. Our student government managed it for 10 years, and then the program had grown so significantly that it really needed more continuity and continuous support. So that's when it moved into my office and Off-Campus Life. We have been as big as running 19 cars 3 nights a week. We focus on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, and we are a very late night. We don't come online until 10 p.m. and we run until 3 a.m. One piece of our program that is unique is that I have paid student employees 2 at a time that are running each night ops, but the drivers and navigators are actually volunteers that are fundraising for their student organization. So they get some training for about 45 minutes and then we put them on the road for the night. Sometimes our volunteers are repeat volunteers, and oftentimes they're just one-time volunteers. We really appreciate that model because it allows the student fee money that pays for RAM Ride to ripple out into our student population, because student organizations who are fundraising can then use that money to put on their own events and support their own goals. Colorado State University is about 30,000 students, and we're located in a city, Fort Collins, of about 170,000. And our Safe Ride program runs throughout all 54 square miles of Fort Collins. We, like a lot of college towns, have a really popular downtown. We've got a lot of house parties, things like that. And particularly when RAM Ride came online in 2003, Uber and Lyft were not a thing then. And so while I think the need for why RAM Ride originally started is not the same, having 20 years of experience, we've been able to adapt and really modernize to what students expect of Safe Rides today, which I'm excited to share later.
Right on. With that unique model, especially being around for 20 plus years, would you say it's interwoven into the identity of the school at this point?
Yeah, 1000%. I feel incredibly lucky that our students feel real ownership of Ramride, feel incredibly proud to have Ramride here. Like to the point that I don't really have to market. I don't put a lot of money into marketing my program because all of the RAs are making sure that all of our incoming first years know it, and our transfer orientation leaders know that all of our transfer students know it. So yes, there's real ownership and pride behind the program for sure.
It's good to hear. Awesome. Tony, similar question for you. Can you speak a bit about the history of USC's Lift Ride program and the impact that it has specifically on USC and the campus?
Yep, absolutely. So we actually started with a program called the Campus Cruiser program, which was a student-run organization that employed about 125 students driving university-owned vehicles. And we did that for about 25 years. It ended back in 2015 when we entered into a partnership with Uber as a way to expand the Safe Ride program, and then ultimately partnered with Lyft in 2016, which remains our current partner here at USC. For the first few semesters, we operated both the Campus Cruiser program and the Lyft program in tandem, but eventually eliminated the Campus Cruiser program and now only use Lyft exclusively. This has proven for us to be a great choice for us, since the goal of our wait times, which was 15 minutes at Campus Cruiser, had really far exceeded that because of demand. And when we approached Lyft and Uber initially about wanting to provide a program on our campus with much lower wait times, they were fully invested at that point. They had been operating for a number of years, and were able to commit to us within a contract that we signed with them that their wait times would be about 4 minutes for the program. So our situation here at USC is that a Safe Ride program is incredibly important to us because we're located in South Los Angeles, and at times that can be a safety concern at night. The program operates from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., 7 days a week. And again, it's been in place now with Lyft since 2016. So they've been a great partner for us.
Awesome. It's great to hear. Switching gears over to Rory. So CU Night Ride at Boulder is pretty deep rooted into the history and the fabric of the school. So out of curiosity, just want to go into it and elaborate about the origin and how it became what it is today in its current iteration.
Yeah. So CU Night Ride originally started at the University of Colorado Boulder in 1985. And it was actually CU Night Walk at that time. And we were giving walking escorts at night to people coming home from parties to make sure that they, felt safe, whether they were intoxicated, worried about assault, or other dangers in the area. And then around the late 90s, we introduced our first vehicle, and that became incredibly popular. There was a lot of student demand for more vehicles to be added rather than the walking escorts. And in the early 2000s, we made the complete shift over to just doing vehicle operations and not doing the night walk anymore. This, of course, changed a little in COVID when we did go back to walking escorts and the introduction of our golf cart service. And I think COVID was a really fundamental time for change for us, because we were able to look at, what students were needing, were they actually going to use the golf carts if we continued that? And it turned out that people were really loving the idea of just getting from one side of campus to the other in a really quick manner. And so we introduced our Polaris Gems, which, if you've never seen one, kind of look like a cartoon from the 70s imagined what a golf cart would look like. They're super fun, and they've definitely helped us reduce wait times, especially for those on-campus rides. In addition to our 2 Polaris Gems, we also have 8 vehicles, and we've been trying to, in light of student demands from the campus, we've switched over to an almost entirely electric and hybrid fleet. So we just purchased 4 new all-electric vehicles. And I think the most important thing to know about CU Night Ride is that it's very, very focused on what our students want. We always listen to student concerns, and because the program is completely student run, from our drivers and dispatchers all the way up to our assistant directors and myself, that really helps us, implement the ideas that we're hearing around campus.
Right on. It seems that all of the changes come directly from that feedback from students. So kudos to that program for operating in that function. Awesome. So for the next theme, we're going to talk a bit more about the rider demographics. Curious to learn more mainly about the interconnectedness of the on-demand technology as it relates to sustainability and efficiency in and around campus. So Lindsay, what would you say has been the improvement in the on-campus experience as a result of this program taking shape and becoming more widely available for students?
I could talk for an hour just about this, but some immediate things that I think to mention. Colorado State University does have a live-on requirement our first year, and so 98% of our first-year students live on campus. We really encourage them to not bring a vehicle if they're able to do so, knowing that some of our students do commute down to Denver on the weekends and stuff, so it may make sense for them to have a car. But if a student's able to not bring a car, and so we do a lot of education around how they can get around town without a vehicle, and so that includes bikes, it includes our Ram Ride, it includes free buses, it includes our partnership with Lyft. So it really impacts, in particular, our students that are living on campus or students nearby that continue to choose to not have a car. And I'm really proud of the fact that we can provide a variety of transportation options to help students make it possible to not have a vehicle with them. Certainly that helps with sustainability purposes. It's one less vehicle on the road, less emissions, et cetera. But I find a lot of focus also on the finances because it's less upkeep on that car. They're not paying for a parking permit on campus, et cetera. So that's one area that I'd want to highlight around sustainability. Yeah, I'll stop there. I think in relation to sustainability, just reducing the need of a student to have a vehicle in town and recognizing we have a unique setup that we're an incredibly flat community. We are a platinum friendly bicycle and city or university and city bicycle area. And so that also helps us kind of close the gap in transportation needs.
For sure. And with those demographics, do you find that, well, you mentioned first year students kind of depending more on the service compared to other demographics, but what about out of town students, out of state students? Do you find they have a bit more of a quicker uptake with Ram rides compared to everybody else?
I find that our first year students are definitely heavy users. When we get our data from Spare and we look at our most popular drop-off areas, our number one in combination as a whole are our residence halls. But then beyond that, I also think about our students that are living, our students are carpooling a lot with each other from our Campus West area, which is a very student heavy area. About 10,000 of our students live in what we call Campus West. And so I also appreciate that those students are thinking strategically about, instead of calling for 4 different individual Ram rides, they all live in the neighborhood together. They're going out together. They commute home together in a Ram ride. Good question about out of state. I feel bad that I don't know that data actually, and I should. I always appreciate when someone asks me a question where I'm like, that is good feedback for me to think about. I need to think more about that. One area, and this is something I am a little envious of in regards to how Boulder runs their program. One area that I'm trying to improve on is graduate student use. I find that a lot of our graduate students feel like the service isn't for them, although they're paying the same student fee and they get the same access to it. So that's an area that I need to improve on in regards to demographic use.
Right on. Awesome. So question for Tony, especially since California is rolling out a bunch of environmental regulations and more coming each year, what part does zero emissions and electric vehicles and just autonomous vehicles, everything in that sector, what part does that play in your service planning?
Well, interestingly, like Lindsay, 5 years ago, I remember talking to students and parents at orientations, trying to convince them that their students need not bring cars to USC because, like every university, inventory is always a problem, and parking lots are mere placeholders for buildings that haven't been built yet. And so, we struggled with that for a number of years. We improved our inventory over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. And then I guess these pleas with, parents and students worked because students actually began to not take their cars to work because the options on campus, became more available to them. So that's been a good thing. I think, in terms of our Safe Ride program and electric vehicles and things on campus, specifically Lyft is really been working with various partners in this area to incentivize drivers to transition to EVs through the use of special leases. But the current infrastructure in South Los Angeles doesn't really support these vehicles. And many of these drivers that drive for Lyft don't have level 2 chargers at their home. So it becomes problematic for them. The other thing I wanted to mention was the use of scooters. Here at USC, we really haven't embraced the use of micromobility for the first and last mile transportation, mostly because of the clutter that these students create and the inability of the city to designate parking near campus and our inability to provide safe places for them to park. So we focused our attention more on managing the scooters that are left on the perimeter of the campus, which are quite a few, to avoid the issues associated with people that have mobility challenges, which we get quite a few complaints about people that can't get by these scooters that people just leave on the sidewalk. But the providers of those scooters, the Birds of the world and so on, they've been less cooperative in helping us achieve that. So I think that eventually we'll have a place for scooters and for the elimination of more and more vehicles on campus and the transition to electric vehicles, both from a commuter standpoint and also from a university standpoint. And the vehicles that we own here, we're actually in the middle of a Green Fleet initiative at USC, where we're working with a consultant to transition our ICE internal combustion engine vehicles on campus, of which we have about 733, to mostly EV fleet over the course of the next 5 or 6 years, as long as we can put the infrastructure in place to really be ready for the Olympics in 2028, recognizing that the optics of having electric vehicles with the world looking at Los Angeles during those games in 5 years is going to be really important for us, as it will be for the city of Los Angeles. So we're doing a little bit of catch up, I think, with the EVs, but the pandemic has kind of pushed us back a little bit. So we're hoping in the next year or two we get a little bit more caught up with both the vehicles and the transition to EVs, as well as our bus electrification.
For sure. The Olympics being in town is a pretty unique motivation as well. That's awesome.
Yes, absolutely. We're excited about that. And it's funny because, it's hard to get excited about anything that's happening in 5 years, but
Right.
This is going to be such a great event.
Awesome. Happy to hear it. Rory, going back to CU, could you provide some data on your rider groups? Which student demographics tend to use your service more often than others? Let's give you a quick example here. Do you see, similar question that I asked Lindsay, do you see more international or first-year students using the program? What kind of trends are you seeing in your demographics?
I would say the trends that we see definitely depends on the day. So CU Night Ride does run 7 days a week. Sunday through Thursday, we run until midnight, and then Friday and Saturday until 1 a.m. And on those Sunday through Wednesday days, especially, we definitely see a lot more international students, international grad students, especially like CSU, CU Boulder tells people, don't bring a car on campus, don't buy a car when you get here. Boulder is very easy to, transport around on the bus system or on the e-bike system. But I think there are a lot of discrepancies in that, because a lot of the public buses stop running around, 8, 9, 10, 11 p.m. And then people don't have a way to get home if they're studying late, or on Friday, Saturdays, if they're out partying, if they're out to the bars. So definitely we see a lot of graduate students and a lot of international students on that first half of the week. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there's definitely more first-year students and more undergraduate students who are out on the hill. Like University Hill is where a lot of our, fraternity sorority life is and where a lot of house parties are held, or on Pearl Street, which is in our downtown area, and that's where a lot of the bars are. So we'll have a lot of rides from campus to the Hill, from campus to Pearl Street, or from kind of those clusters of off-campus housing.
Awesome, awesome. Just looking in the chat here, Deborah Franklin mentioned that I am a graduate student seeking to be included in campus life. Thank you for those observations. So directly from the students themselves, they're glad to be included, those groups that usually aren't thought of for these types of services. So that is great to hear. Okay, so let's move a bit further now. Let's kind of get deeper in things about the challenges. So utilizing those TNCs, those transportation network companies, and the technology and ease of use. So overall, after hearing a bit of the core challenges that each school has been experiencing prior to leaving using TNC, let's discuss some more of the impact for a resource such as Lyft or whatever type of resource, whether it be internal or external, overall some of the value adds and some of the issues that you've come up against and how you overcame them. So for Lindsay, could you share your experience in regards to the onboarding process of bringing in Lyft for your program and the overall impact that on-demand technology has had in your service?
Yeah, this has been a game changer for us to partner with Lyft. Similar to what Rory mentioned earlier, COVID was a huge time that kind of forced us to think innovatively. And so because of COVID restrictions, we could not bring our fleet online. So in fall of 2020 is when we started our partnership with Lyft. And for that academic year, we functioned exclusively with Lyft. And it gave us the opportunity to support students nationwide 24/7. And running my own Ramride fleet, I could have never done that. So for that year, we gave students so many free rides per month, again, nationwide 24/7 for them to use whatever they need. And so our students were so excited about the expansion of our service, no longer having physical or time boundaries the way that our own physical fleet would, that when we came back to in-person learning of fall of 21, it was clear that we needed to continue that partnership with Lyft. But additionally, our students were also demanding that we brought back our own fleet. And I think that's for two reasons. A few reasons. One, the student org fundraising, that is something we could not continue. We couldn't do that with Lyft. And our student orgs, that's a part of the student org culture on our campus, is volunteering with Ramride or fundraising with Ramride. But additionally, students also love riding in Ramride vehicles. Our patrons always say their favorite part is chatting with the driver and navigator and hearing about their experience and sharing conversations, etc. And our drivers and navigators, the volunteers, driving for Ramride is a really concrete way that they can take care of their fellow Rams. So bringing a fleet back online was a priority for us, but continuing with Lyft was also a priority. And what we have been able to do is supplement our fleet with Lyft. And we do this in two main ways. One, if my fleet cannot come online for one night, maybe because it's snowing and it's not safe for me to put student drivers out there, or occasionally we also will not have enough volunteers for one night. Before, if I had to take my fleet offline before COVID, we just weren't there. We would put some information on our website about other options for students to use, etc. But now, instead of saying we're shutting down, we say, well, we're just operating with Lyft tonight, and we push out free Lyft codes. So the money that would have been used to pay the student organization that night, we just swap it into Lyft codes. So it doesn't impact my budget in a negative way, and it still gives students the free, safe rides that they need around town. And we push those out via Instagram. We also use the Spare app to push out those codes. So if students are opening up our Ramride app, it's a Spare app that's white labeled to look like just a Ramride app. They'll see that we're not online that night, but they see the Lyft code so they can still get their free ride. Additionally, like Rory was mentioning, we do have some gaps of serving students' transportation needs throughout the week. So a lot of our bus lines during the week do shut down between like 6 and 8 p.m. But if a student has a really late night exam or something like that, if it's a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday and Ramride's not running, what we now have is the ability to give students individual lift codes that they can use at their convenience. So a student would contact us in the beginning of the semester saying, hey, I've got one late exam each month for my engineering class. I have no way to get home after that exam. So we'll give them lift codes to say, okay, on those nights, you use these codes to get a lift ride home. So even though my fleet does come out during the weekend late nights, working with Lyft has just meant that I can serve students 24/7. And last thing I'll mention, I also continue to serve students nationwide because of this partnership with Lyft. So last week was spring break. It's also St. Patrick's Day. So we know a lot of students will leave town for spring break, and a lot of students will participate in heavy drinking on St. Patrick's Day. So I can run Lyft codes to say, no matter where you are in the US, use Lyft to get home. And so they're able to utilize their Ram Ride student fee, regardless if they're in town or where they are. So that has been a really cool thing that I couldn't have done before with just my own fleet.
Right. And it sounds like, from what I'm gathering from what you just said, one of the biggest value adds that you've had from your mixed offering of internal and external fleets is that flexibility, being able to turn it on and off and being able to tweak it as you see fit. Would you say that would be your observation as well?
100%. And I've even appreciated Lyft, how they've evolved throughout COVID. Because in the beginning, if I wanted to run a Lyft code, I had to do it through a Lyft employee. So there was a bit of a lag time there. They were fast, but it would still take me, 24 to 48 hours or something to get a code that I could then push out. But now I'm on the back end as a Lyft administrator. I can create my code and turn it on immediately. So I'm fully in control of when to turn codes on and off. There is no lag time. So it gives me the ability to respond very quickly if something unexpected happens with my fleet.
For sure. Awesome. Question for Tony. What would you say is the biggest pro and con, or pros and cons, however many you kind of have there, of leveraging a TNC like Lyft within your Safe Ride program?
Well, I mean, the biggest pros for us included these 3 to 4 minute wait times that they committed to, regardless of the number of weekly rides that we were doing, or that they were doing, and the sharing of useful data that we would get from Lyft through the use of the heat maps that they would provide to see where students were primarily going. It's not that we were checking on them, but it was very useful data to the Department of Public Safety, who could then patrol those areas much more frequently. The confidence that Lyft had vetted their drivers through security protocols was also very important to us. One of the challenges really with the program over the past several years is that the amount of traffic that the Lyft drivers have created around campus and the cost to the university. I'll preemptively say that we are Lyft's largest customer in the entire country. And pre-COVID, Lyft was performing in excess of 35,000 rides, shared rides per week. But then when campus opened up after the initial closing due to COVID, they were only able to offer standard rides because of the policy set forth by the Los Angeles Department of Public Health. So the weekly total of rides that Lyft was performing for USC after the students returned was 65,000 rides per week. That's between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m., 7 days a week. And when you just think about the enormity of that, and the fact that Lyft was still able to provide 2 to 3 to 4 minute wait times consistently, it's pretty amazing. The other thing that's pretty amazing is the cost to the university, which we've addressed, in a more sort of front-facing way for the fall semester of next year, or this year, fall of 23, in terms of a transportation fee to help subsidize the cost, because it has gotten as big as I've just mentioned. The good news is that LA Department of Public Health actually relaxed their policies, and so we were able to bring shared rides back to the campus in January of this year, beginning with the spring semester. So now we've seen the rides go from 65,000 per week down to about 25,000 per week. The program has changed a little bit with shared rides with Lyft. Quite frankly, the wait times are a little bit higher than they were pre-COVID. There's a number of reasons for that I can talk about, but they're still doing an amazing job. Wait times have increased a little bit as well as part of this change to the program when they returned it But clearly the number of cars that are around campus and the cost have been some of the things that have been most challenging for us.
For sure. With those challenges bringing up, any thoughts in how to address those, or is that currently still being formulated?
No, I mean, it's an ongoing battle, quite frankly. We do have designated lift pickup and drop-off areas. That's helped. It's really a work in progress. The other thing that's a challenge for us is that we have a closed campus after 9 p.m. So if you're a guest that wants to come onto our campus and you walk on, you have to be registered by the student that you're actually coming to visit. Lift cars have the ability to come on and off campus because if they have a student in the car, they can just show their ID to the person that is at the gate, and that person will allow the driver to come onto campus. But between the lift cars and, again, all of the other cars that are around delivering food and everything else, it's sort of organized chaos, if you will, just because of we've been at it for a long time, and people sort of know where they can go and where they can't go, and we've been, it's been manageable.
That's interesting. Question for Rory. So since CU doesn't currently utilize the TNC, how are the potential benefits to implementing one being kind of judged, if they are? So are you looking at potential benefits? And if you are, what's that process look like?
We actually have been looking to partner with Lyft, similar to CSU. We'd love to chat with CSU about Ram Ride because they're just to our north. And there's a lot of gaps that CU Night Ride cannot fill with our current program that we think, having these Lyft codes might help with. I think one of those was that for a Safe Ride program, we do end pretty early in the night. Even on the weekends ending at 1 a.m., there's still a lot of students who are out and about on the town, who are at parties, at brats, and providing those Lyft codes maybe in those last couple hours of the night might help fill that gap there. I think another one is, CSU mentioned that they use it when they're not able to run during snow days. So when it's not safe for us to put out student drivers on the road, a Lyft code might be something to offer as well. And we've also thought about it as a connection. We have a lot of commuter students coming from the surrounding suburban areas. And I think that a Lyft code could really help fill that gap of, we only go to Boulder city limits, but if CU Night Ride could take them to the edge of Boulder and they could get a discounted Lyft ride from there to their home, that could definitely fill a gap.
Yet another improvement that might be coming to the service. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to switch gears here to marketing. So for the entire panel, feel free to chime in as you see fit. Once the service was implemented, I've heard in the past from a lot of other universities that marketing can be a challenge. So how did you get the word out to your students, and how did you kind of, as things grew and there was more of an uptick in the usage of the program, how did you kind of scale back the marketing? Did you scale it back? Did you scale it up? And what initiatives and best practices do you have in and around marketing?
I'll start. You ladies don't mind, but I mean, quite frankly, it wasn't very hard at all. I mean, we talk about it during orientations. We had direct emails to the students. There was a lot of the campus literature that gets printed and sent to incoming students. All has information about the Lyft, the Safe Ride program here, and that we're partnered with Lyft. Our website has always been a great resource for people to go to understand what the program does and does not do, how they get invitations, things like that. So it really is a kind of a how-to guide for them with some FAQs on there at all. So it really, and the fact that it's been in place here for 7 years now, even though we get a fresh new group of customers, if you will, every fall semester of 3,000 or 3,500, word travels very quickly. So it's not very hard, and not very expensive at all, obviously, because we're just doing it internally. So word travels quickly.
For sure. And Lindsay, I know we had a visual representation of what you were doing.
These on the screen, these are some of the examples of Instagram posts that we put out when we have to switch over to our Lyft operation. So again, these come out on our Instagram, and then we also put our Lyft codes on the actual RamRide app. And one feature that I really like about this Spare app is that I can put push notifications on the app and I can determine the level of importance. So if the push notification is maybe like an update to the program, for example, the Spare app allows us students can choose a pooled option to lower wait times, or they can continue to choose a private option, which is how RamRide is operated traditionally. That's one that I put on the app to let people know it's there, but it's a less important one versus when I do Lyft codes, I make it a very important one and it comes up on the student screen and they have to acknowledge that they saw it. So those are a couple of areas that we share our Lyft codes. So these are just some examples of some things that my students put together when we run Lyft codes. Some marketing, I mentioned in the beginning, we don't do a lot of marketing. We have been feeling the pressure on like, okay, so is our lack of marketing then really, or I shouldn't say lack of marketing, but maybe more limited marketing. The fact that less graduate students use us, I'm like, okay, that's a reflection on us not doing as much marketing. But a couple of areas that we do market that we have found to be successful, coincidentally, I don't know if folks can see this in the back of the screen, not that you can tell what that poster is, but the bottom of that poster is a RamRide ad and the top of it is our party registration system. We run a really successful party registration system that's a partnership between our university and our city, and we run these programs, we co-market these programs together because a lot of our students using RamRide are coming from off-campus house parties. The other thing we do is we do have one late night bus route in town that runs from our downtown to our Campus West area, Friday and Saturday nights, pretty similar hours as RamRide. For some students, that bus really works for them, but some students definitely like the door-to-door service because they become accustomed to like an Uber or a Lyft, so they really prefer RamRide. But us, RamRide, and that late night bus system, we share marketing with each other as well to let students know the variety of options that they have for late night. So those are some areas that we have found to be successful.
Good to hear. Rory, anything to share on the marketing front for CU?
Yeah, for sure. So I think most importantly for CU Night Ride, we always run a huge marketing campaign at the beginning of the fall semester. That's when all of the first year students are coming in that wouldn't already know about CU Night Ride. It's when all the new graduate students are coming in. So we'll set up tables usually around the University Memorial Center, which is where we're based. That just like have our riders, or not our riders, our drivers and dispatchers and a member of the leadership team there to spread information, give out little stickers that have our phone number, share about our app, share about hiring new drivers. And that's been really successful in the past. Something we continue throughout the year is that we just have posters up around campus that have a QR code to our website. So we make sure to keep those updated and they're posted everywhere throughout campus. But really, I hear from students that the way that they find out about it is that they just see our cars driving around campus or they hear from a friend. So I think that like word of mouth and like having the visibility, like we have top lights on top of our vehicles that say CU Night Ride and have our phone number listed. I think that has been honestly the most important way that people have found out about CU Night Ride.
Nice. And word of mouth is probably the most trusted form of marketing. If my roommate tends to use it from time to time and they have a positive experience, I'm more likely to use it as well. That's awesome. So kind of wrapping up here, focusing on the future. I know we kind of chipped away at it a bit throughout, and each of the programs seem to be pretty forward thinking and open to feedback and changes. So before we head into the Q&A, I just want to hear about what's next for each of the programs. Starting off with Lindsay, what's one thing that you know now that you wish you had known when you first started or began managing the Safe Ride service at RamRides? Are there any exciting milestones ahead for RamRide? Just run us through that entire thought process there.
Okay, maybe this isn't what you're aiming for, but sometimes I joke with people, you know, I think a lot of us end up in careers we weren't necessarily expecting. I've got a PhD in higher ed leadership. I knew I'd be working in higher ed, but I didn't know I'd be running a Safe Ride program. And so like the amount of knowledge I have about vomit bags now is like excessive. And I just wish I had like known more about that maybe in the beginning. That's kind of silly. But okay, in all seriousness, a couple of things. One, when I first started my partnership with Lyft, we wanted to stretch our dollars as much as possible because my funding is set up to run a safe ride program where I know how much I'm paying to rent my cars. I know how much I'm paying to my student orgs, et cetera. My budget wasn't set up to then switch to this like unlimited Lyft ride, certainly. So when I first started my partnership with Lyft, in order to try and stretch our dollars, we offered 50% off of Lyft rides. Not popular at all. And so then we switched a few months later to just saying, okay, we'll give you up to 4 free rides. So it's less rides per month that we might be able to support you with, but they're going to be free. And that skyrocketed. So if folks are thinking about working with a TNC, I just found that a discount on the ride was not nearly as effective as just giving a free ride. So that's one thing I wish I would have known going into that. One thing I would share that maybe is a little bit different than specifically what Tony's mentioning. I hear Tony talking, and this makes sense. The wait time is incredibly important. That makes sense. And our students care about our wait times, no doubt. We do keep track of what's our average wait time for RAM ride, and that does matter. But I've learned over the years that our students are willing to accept a higher wait time because they know their fellow RAMs are coming to get them, and they know they're helping student orgs earn money by taking that ride. And so I am really, I wish I would have thought about that more 10 years ago, or when I started working with Lyft several years ago, that what do students value most? And sometimes it's wait times, but there's other things they also value. So am I collecting the right data to show our success in what students care about and how they would define success for our program?
Nice. Rory, focusing on that future focusing lens, CU Night Ride, you have a lot of success going back, like you said, from the mid 80s in this past iterations. What would you say in regards to the demand increase? We have here 160% demand increase throughout using a customization from apps. So having an app that empowers students to utilize the service. Other than that demand increase, what else is the program looking forward to in terms of innovation? Is there anything kind of on the cusp? What are you looking at to kind of take the service to the next level?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing on our minds right now is expanding our program in a way that's going to reduce wait times for our students. I think, a lot of people are hesitant to use Night Ride because if you're at a party and you're ready to go, you don't want to be waiting for 30, 45 minutes, an hour for your ride to come. Additionally, that we've been looking at a couple of different things that Spare has to offer, including like communication between riders and drivers so that we can hopefully bring down that rate of cancellations and no-shows. We've been looking at, being able to select a certain driver if that makes you feel more safe. So thinking about, do female riders feel more safe with a female driver? And how can we support that at our university? So there's a couple of different things in discussion in the works there.
Awesome. And Tony, in terms of future plans, do you foresee the overall trends in mobility? We talked a bit about the regional things that you're facing externally, but do you see the overall trends in mobility needs affecting how you approach the safe ride planning there at USC?
Well, I mentioned the scooters earlier, just micro-mobility, and I do think that, someday they'll have a place around USC and we'll be able to utilize them more often or more regularly. But until the city of Los Angeles helps us to regulate them, I don't think we'll be a big adopter in that way. We've been approached by various companies waiting or wanting to provide autonomous vehicles or autonomous shuttles at USC as well, kind of using us as a test bed. And I foresee us wanting to be part of that. We'll certainly continue to promote biking and walking and provide incentives to do so. I don't see our current Safe Ride program shifting too much over the next few years. I mentioned earlier that we would be implementing a transportation fee in the fall of 23, which has been announced and not been announced. It's not been very popular for those that have realized that that's going to be in place. It's something that a lot of universities have not done, and the ones that have typically use that money to subsidize the cost of transit services. We, on the other hand, have been very forthright in our communication about using the money to subsidize the Lyft program, but at the same time, And to the point about mobility, the fee will also include free Metro bus and rail passes for the city of Los Angeles for every student that wants one. We have previously offered shuttles to LAX during winter break for students when they have to leave town to go home. And this transportation fee will also include not only the Metro bus and rail passes for every student that wants one, but improved service to LAX during Thanksgiving, during winter break, during spring break, during summer break. And, you know, that's kind of a load off their mind, or maybe not a load off their mind, but, you know, it's money saved, right? It's money in their pocket because they have to take an Uber or Lyft or some other shared ride to LAX when they have to go home, which is typically expensive. So, so we'll be doing that. That's the way we'll be using the money when we implement the fee in the fall. But in terms of, you know, just how our approach to safe rides, I don't really see it changing very much between you know, now and the next couple of years. I will also say that, and I think my fellow panelists would agree, that Lyft has been an amazing partner for us. They have a very robust platform. They'll do anything you really ask them to. They'll customize the program in any way that you want them to. And they are always by your side. They're always willing to help. So that's my little commercial for Lyft.
Can I add one thing, Josh?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm thinking about some themes that other people have shared, and I completely agree, Tony. Lyft has been an excellent partner, and I would choose them over and over and over again as our TNC partner. I also have really appreciated using the Spare app because I've used other dispatch systems and apps in the past, and a lot of them always assumed that my dispatchers or my drivers were like full-time people and had a lot of experience using the app. But because of my model using volunteers that, again, oftentimes are one-time volunteers, I am also really appreciative of Spare's simplicity, where I can easily train someone to use the app and then put them on the road and they're good to go. That's been incredibly easy. There was a question I saw come through the Q&A about do the panelists, do we have our own app or an integrated app? And RamRide uses the Spare app that's white labeled to be RamRide. But one thing I want to highlight, and where I see more happening, is that integration of all the mobility options. So the Spare app even offers our RamRide patrons the option to book their Lyft ride, to move from the Spare app to the Lyft app seamlessly. And Lyft partners with Spin, which is an e-bike and e-scooter provider. And like Tony, like you mentioned, we do have e-bikes and e-scooters in Fort Collins, but we have a shared contract between the university and the city, and we only allow Spin. We have an exclusive contract. So I hear you in saying we have to get the city behind helping us to manage this. And so I feel really lucky to have that in our community. Yep. But if I give students Lyft codes, they can use it for a Lyft ride or to rent a Spin bike or scooter. So the integration that I have with RamRide, Lyft, and Spin, I think is significant. And I see that only happening more, where students, you know, Google Maps already does this a lot, where they integrate getting on a bus route or getting an e-bike. There's already integration. And so I see that just continuing on, where my Colorado State students can look on one app, see all of their options for free transportation or how much other transportation options would cost them. So that's one thing I'm excited about, that it will continue more and more in the future.
Definitely. And that's actually a perfect segue into our Q&A. Just to add some more context for Dave's question around, does your Safe Ride program have an app? If so, is it an app dedicated only to this program, or is the app integrated with other mobility options? Lindsay and Tony kind of just painted the full picture there, but from Spare side, to answer your question, yes, we have a number of integrations for a mixed offering, especially where you have internal fleets that you need to leverage those third-party TNCs. We have quite a few partnerships, namely with Lyft, a number of integrations that show multimodal capabilities. If students have to go from point A to point B, and their ultimate destination is outside the service zone, we actually show them multiple steps. So whether they take a bus after getting off of the Safe Ride or after getting off of their Lyft vehicle, it just depends on the scoping there. Additionally, I will mention last call for questions, everybody, so feel free to throw them up in the chat or Q&A. We have a question for Tony coming in from David around, could you just explain the bike shares around campus. Seems to be a lack of bike shares. Want to dive a bit more into that? You talked about it at the top of the call, but you want to add a bit more scoping to that?
On the bike shares around campus, yeah, I mean, there are some bike shares around campus that the city of Los Angeles has actually put in place. So there's racks with 20 or 30 bikes that anybody can rent and use. Those are the only ones that are around our campus. We don't, what we've seen is this transition over the last couple of years, which has been interesting. I mentioned how less students are bringing cars to campus, but what we've also seen is this transition from bikes to personal scooters on campus. So we actually have, I don't think it's more scooters than we have on bikes. I would say no, but we have a lot more scooters on campus than we ever imagined that we would. And they create their own issues with speed, riding on pedestrian sidewalks and things like that. And we've taken a very soft approach at USC to managing this. And unfortunately, the result of that has been, more accidents than we had anticipated, where, students are riding these things and they're crashing into other people that are just walking. The other issue with them, of course, is that, they have lithium batteries in them, which pose a risk to them charging them in their residential units. There's been a couple of instances where the batteries have caught fire. They were very quickly extinguished, but those are problematic as well. So just to kind of get back to what you originally talked about, Josh, I think it lends itself to, the bikes around our campus are available if people want to ride them. We don't have any bikes on our campus that people can rent. And as I mentioned, we don't allow scooters on our campus. And the providers of the scooters in this area have all been cooperative in that they have put the technology on those scooters so that if a student does try and ride them on campus, they turn off. Right. So they have to be left, outside of campus. I think we'll get there. We're not there yet. We don't have the cooperation that Lindsay mentioned, with the city yet to really roll that out in a way that we would like.
For sure. So from what I'm gathering, the conversations have been happening, but the infrastructure isn't currently set there externally to have it be a everyday thing on campus.
Correct.
For sure. A few more questions coming in the chat now from Joseph. For autonomous transit, is there enough right of way on campus for dedicated paths? Tony, I think this one is directed to USC. Tony added a bit of context around the question. David added a bit of context around the question for Tony. USC buses can be limited between campuses, and they're hoping that autonomous can be an option soon. Any comments for that portion there, Tony? I
think we do have enough right of way for autonomous vehicles on campus. I think, we're all a bit, I'm sure my fellow panelists would agree, and many on this call, if you go to parking conferences, which occur 2 or 3 times a year, everybody talks about autonomous vehicles. We've been talking about that for the last 10 years, and they're always coming out in the next year or 2 or 3. And I think we're getting closer, but I think there's still a lot of doubt about whether or not, they're safe as they could be, particularly in a campus environment when students are not as cooperative as they could be when it comes to crossing the street and paying attention, just generally when they're on campus. So until that technology gets to a point where it is, fail-proof, then we're gonna sit in the sidelines and not be an early adopter of that technology. I do think, though, that when we have a perfect environment here where we have a small enough campus and a perimeter of our campus where we could actually implement autonomous vehicles to test not to test the technology, but just to augment what we're currently doing.
For sure. And the last question here, Joseph, thanks you for your answer. Last question here for Tony. How do students currently access Lyft on the USC campus?
So at the beginning of every fall semester, we get a listing of every student that's going to be taking classes, that's going to be part of the program, that basically has an .edu email address. And we get that from the bursar, so that's been a validated email address. We send that to Lyft, and then Lyft sends an invitation to every one of those students where they are invited to participate in the program. They have to put their credit card on file, and they have to activate the app, of course, and that's how they're actually invited to the program. Once 6 p.m. starts and the program is available, when they go into their Lyft app, they will see the USC Safe Ride program, and they'll be able to choose their rides, and it'll be no cost to them. I talked about how robust the platform is, but we have a geofence for the Lyft rides around campus that's about 2 miles from the center. And so if a student travels from point A to point B within that geofence, the ride is free. But if the student is picked up within the geofence and leaves the geofence, let's say they go from USC to LA Live, which is outside the geofence, then the cost for that ride automatically revert back to their own credit card. The driver has no clue that that's going on, but again, it just speaks to how robust their platform is. The codes that Lindsay talked about that they can generate for service from zip code to zip code, which we use as well. But long-winded answer to how they're invited. Sorry about that, but they basically get an invitation at the beginning of each fall semester.
Can I add on to that, Josh?
Definitely.
When Ramride first started partnering with Lyft, and we gave every student so many free rides per month nationwide, what Tony's describing, exact same system or same way that we did it. So students do have to activate it from that email. So there is a step for them, but then it's just in their app then, indefinitely or until they get removed from the program on Lyft's end. One thing I really appreciated, I was really nervous in the beginning about, okay, Ramride, the fleet's coming offline, but how do I tell students about this Lyft? And Lyft had a whole marketing thing set up for us. They knew the timing of when to send an email to say, in 1 week, you will be getting this email that you need to opt into. And then they have a lot of data showing how to effectively walk students through the steps so they know what to expect, what they need to do to act on it. And we didn't have any, we had no notable issues of implementing the Lyft partnership and getting students to activate it inside their Lyft app.
For sure. And the last question we're going to take here, keeping time in mind as a factor. Another one for Tony around USC. You're popular today, Tony, in and around bike shares, and the comment you made earlier around bike shares being nearby campus. How if they are being tracked, how are they tracked? And having that communicated to students. Just run us through that quickly.
Well, the bikes that are outside campus that are rentable through the city program, we have nothing to do with. I mean, the cost to rent those programs is through the city of Los Angeles. Those racks of bikes around USC, and they're not e-bikes, they're actually city bikes, if you will. The community around USC, although they've installed bike paths that go from USC downtown to LA Live, as an example, are not widely used. Students, as I mentioned, do use their personal bikes and or scooters to get from off-campus housing to the campus. But we're not connected to the bikes that are available outside of campus that are part of the city's offerings. So I hope that answers the question.
For sure. And with that, we'll close down the Q&A. So I wanted to thank all of our panelists and all of our attendees for attending today's session. We hope it was fruitful and the knowledge impactful. My information for contact in and around Spare and just the overall micro transit options available can be found in the email for the registration. Or if you can't find it there, feel free to reach out through CoMotion. We want to thank everybody for their time and wish everybody a happy day.